When was the last time you made your wife feel like she mattered? Marcus Hale had been too busy cheating, lying, and coming home late to notice she'd stopped waiting for him. He found out at 8:04 p.m., standing in his mansion, dressed for a charity event she attended with another man, an event she went to with him every year, until tonight. The note sat on the marble kitchen counter, her handwriting elegant against expensive stationery he'd bought her last Christmas. Marcus, I'll be attending the Lakeshore Charity Gala with Philip Brandt. Don't wait up. Simone. Philip Brandt, his business rival, the CEO of Brandt Tech Products, the man who'd been trying to poach his investors for 3 years. Marcus read it twice, then a third time, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. His hands trembled, not from anger, not yet, but from something unfamiliar, something cold spreading through his chest like poison. Fear. When was the last time Marcus Hale had been afraid of anything? But we need to go back. Back to when Marcus knew what fear felt like every single day. Back to Milwaukee, 15 years ago, when he was just a scrappy white kid with calloused hands and impossible dreams, working double shifts at a packaging plant and sketching prototypes on napkins during his lunch break. That's where he met Simone Carter, this brilliant, beautiful black girl with eyes that saw straight through his bravado to the ambition underneath. She was studying graphic design at community college, working weekends at her aunt's salon, and she had this way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. Marcus fell hard. They got married in a courthouse ceremony with $27 in their joint bank account, and for 2 years they lived in a cramped studio apartment where the radiator clanked all night and the neighbors fought through paper-thin walls. But God, they were happy. PB&J sandwiches for dinner felt like feasts when Simone laughed at his terrible jokes. She'd leave sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. "You're going to change the world, baby. I believe in you." And Marcus would bring her wildflowers stolen from the park because he couldn't afford the florist. Those were the days when they couldn't afford anything except each other, and somehow that had been enough. Then Marcus's eco-friendly smart thermostat prototype got picked up by a venture capital firm. Within 3 years, Hale Innovations became a household name. By 28, Marcus was a billionaire. The money came fast, so fast it felt like vertigo. Suddenly, there were board meetings in Singapore, factory openings in Germany, investor dinners that stretched past midnight. Simone traveled with him at first, her hand in his as they navigated glittering hotel lobbies and corporate galas. But somewhere along the way, Marcus stopped holding her hand. He'd introduce her to investors with a distracted smile, then disappear into conversations about profit margins and market disruption, leaving her alone at tables full of people who looked through her like she was furniture. She'd come home from those events exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with jet lag, and Marcus was too busy checking his phone to notice. The gifts started as apologies. A Cartier bracelet for the anniversary dinner he missed, a Birkin bag for the weekend getaway he cancelled, diamond earrings for the night he came home at 3 a.m., smelling like someone else's perfume. Simone's closet filled with designer labels and luxury items she never asked for, compensation for a husband who was never there. She tried to reach him, suggested weekly date nights that he cancelled 4 times. In a row, brought homemade lunch to his office only to watch him rush. Off to a conference call without touching it, asked him to come to church with her, and got a distracted maybe next week that turned into never. Each rejection was a small death, the kind that happens so quietly you don't realize you're mourning until there's nothing left to bury. Then came the gala last spring, the one that should have been a celebration of Hale Innovations' new product line. Marcus introduced Simone to Vanessa King, this striking business partner from New York with sharp cheekbones and sharper ambition. The way Marcus and Vanessa looked at each other, those knowing glances, the inside jokes, the casual intimacy of 2 people who'd shared more than spreadsheets, it confirmed everything Simone had been trying not to believe. She stood there in her $1,000 dress, smiling through the humiliation, as her husband's infidelity played out in front of shareholders and socialites. That night, she cried herself to sleep in their king-sized bed while Marcus passed out drunk. In the guest wing, oblivious to the fact that his wife's heart was breaking 3 doors down. The next morning, Simone drove to her sister Aaliyah's house in their old neighborhood, the one Marcus rarely visited anymore. Aaliyah's bungalow was modest, peeling paint, cramped kitchen, mismatched furniture, but it was full of something Marcus's mansion would never have: warmth, realness, love that didn't come with a price tag. Over plates of home-cooked collard greens and cornbread, Simone finally broke. Aaliyah held her sister while she sobbed, then looked her dead in the eye and said what needed, saying, "Baby girl, you've been disappearing for years, trying to fit into his world. When was the last time you did something for yourself?" 3 days later, Simone boarded a plane for a disaster relief volunteer mission down south, helping flood victims rebuild their lives. She left Marcus a vague note. He barely looked up from his laptop, muttering, "Okay, sounds good," before his phone rang with another crisis that seemed more urgent than his wife leaving. And that's when everything changed, because down in that flood-ravaged town, covered in mud and sweat, hauling debris alongside strangers, who became friends, Simone met a man who did something Marcus hadn't done in years. He saw her. His name was Phil, and he had kind blue eyes and a steady presence that felt like safety. They worked side by side, and he asked her questions like her answers mattered, listened like her words were scripture, treated her with a respect she'd forgotten she deserved. And when Simone cried about her crumbling marriage, Phil handed her a handkerchief, such an old-fashioned, thoughtful gesture, and said 6 words that broke something open inside her: "You deserve so much better than this." By the time Philip Brandt invited her to the Lakeshore Charity Gala, Simone had made her choice. Not to hurt Marcus, but to stop hurting herself. So here's the question burning in Marcus's hands as he stands in his empty mansion, staring at Simone's note. What do you do when you finally realize you've lost the only thing that ever really mattered, and she's already walking through the door with someone else? Marcus crumpled Simone's note in his fist, but the words were already burned into his brain. Philip Brandt, the Lakeshore Charity Gala, his wife, with another man, at his event. The event where every business contact, every investor, every person who mattered in Milwaukee's corporate elite would see his wife on another man's arm. But here's what terrified Marcus more than the humiliation. Somewhere deep in his gut, beneath the rage and the wounded pride, a voice whispered the truth he'd been running from for years. He deserved this. Let's rewind 3 weeks. Let's go back to that disaster relief zone in rural Louisiana where Simone Carter Hale traded her Louboutins for work boots and discovered what it felt like to matter again. The town had been decimated, homes reduced to skeletal frames, streets turned to rivers of mud, families sleeping in temporary shelters with nothing but the clothes they'd fled in. Simone arrived with a church volunteer group, expecting to spend a week handing out supplies and writing checks. She didn't expect to find herself shoulder-deep in debris, hauling waterlogged furniture from a grandmother's destroyed living room, her designer nails broken, her expensive hair products replaced by a simple ponytail and bandana, and she definitely didn't expect to feel more alive than she had in 5 years. That's where Phil appeared. A heavy wooden beam had trapped Simone against a collapsed wall, and she was struggling to lift it when strong hands joined hers. "On 3, a warm voice said. 1, 2. They heaved together, and the beam crashed aside. Simone looked up into the kindest blue eyes she'd ever seen, sandy blonde hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, a genuine smile creasing his weathered face. "You okay?" he asked, and the concern in his voice was so real it almost hurt. When was the last time someone had asked if she was okay and actually waited for an answer? "I'm Simone," she said, brushing dirt from her volunteered shirt. "Phil," he replied, extending a calloused hand. "Looks like we're on the same crew today." Over the next 70 to 2 hours, something shifted in Simone's universe. She and Phil worked side by side, clearing debris, distributing food and water, sitting with elderly residents who needed someone to listen to their losses. Phil treated her like a partner, asking her opinion on which houses, to tackle first, trusting her judgment, celebrating her efforts. During water breaks, they'd sit on overturned buckets and talk, really talk the way. Simone used to talk with Marcus back when conversation meant more than logistics. Phil asked about her life, and for the first time in years, Simone found herself speaking truthfully. "I'm married to a very successful man," she said carefully, staring at her wedding ring. "But success has a price, and I think I've been paying it." Phil didn't offer platitudes or advice. He just listened, his presence steady as an anchor, and said, "Sounds lonely." 2 words. That's all it took for tears to spring to Simone's eyes, because someone, finally, saw it. The isolation she'd been drowning in while surrounded by luxury. They discovered they both loved Motown music. Phil's mother had played Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell records during Sunday breakfasts, and Simone's grandmother had done the same. They debated the best soul food. Phil admitted he'd never had good collard greens, and Simone promised to change that someday, the word someday hanging between them with unexpected weight. Phil told stories about growing up in rural Michigan, about his father's hardware store and learning to fix things with his hands. Simone shared memories of Milwaukee before Marcus's money changed everything. The community, the church potlucks, the neighbors who became family. With every story, every laugh, every comfortable silence, Simone felt pieces of herself clicking back into place. Pieces she didn't even realize had been missing. On the 4th night, the volunteers gathered for a barbecue appreciation dinner, paper plates piled, with ribs and coleslaw, coolers full of cheap beer, someone's pickup truck radio playing old country songs. Phil found Simone standing apart from the group, staring up at stars you could actually see out here, away from city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, handing her a cold bottle. She took it, grateful for something to do with her hands. "I was just thinking how different this feels from my normal life," she admitted. "All the galas and charity functions Marcus drags me to, they're supposed to help people, but they feel so hollow, like we're just rich people congratulating ourselves for caring. This," she gestured at the volunteers laughing around the fire, "this actually matters." Phil studied her face in the firelight. "Your husband doesn't see how special you are, does he?" The question landed like a punch. Simone's throat tightened. "He used to," she whispered. "When we had nothing, he saw everything. Now that we have everything, I'm invisible." That's when Phil took a breath and asked the question that would detonate Marcus Hale's entire world. "There's this charity gala I have to attend next month in Milwaukee. The Lakeshore event. I know it's probably not your scene, but would you consider coming with me? As friends," he added quickly. "I could use someone real to talk to in a room full of fake smiles." Simone's heart hammered. The Lakeshore Charity Gala, the same event she'd attended with Marcus for 7 straight years, standing silently beside him while he networked, and she felt like expensive wallpaper. "What's your last name, Phil?" she asked suddenly, a strange suspicion creeping in. He hesitated. "Brandt Philip Brandt." The world tilted. Philip Brandt, CEO of Brandt Tech Products, Marcus's primary business competitor. The man Marcus had called a trust fund pretty boy and a tech sector parasite at least a dozen times over dinner. Simone should have laughed at the cosmic absurdity. She should have politely declined and backed away. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'll come." Because here's what Marcus Hale never understood. You can only make someone feel invisible for so long before they start looking for people who see them. And Philip Brandt, successful, kind, genuinely interested Philip Brandt, saw Simone Carter Hale exactly as she was. Not as an accessory, not as the billionaire's wife, just as Simone. And that was more valuable than every diamond Marcus had ever bought her. The volunteer mission ended. Simone flew back to Milwaukee with Phil's number in her phone and a promise to meet him at the gala. She returned to the mansion expecting, what? That Marcus would notice the light in her eyes, that he'd ask about her trip with actual interest. Marcus was in Los Angeles closing a deal with a Silicon Valley venture firm. He'd sent her a text. "Glad you're home safe. Wire transfer in your account for new clothes." Galas in 3 weeks, need you looking sharp. Not I missed you, not tell me about your trip, just money and expectations. Business as usual in the Hale household. Simone walked through rooms filled with furniture that cost more than most people's cars, and felt nothing. She opened her closet, racks of designer dresses Marcus had bought to dress her up like a doll, and felt sick. That night, she pulled out a stunning sapphire blue gown she'd purchased. 2 years ago for a date night Marcus had cancelled at the last minute. She'd never worn it. It still had the tags. She hung it on her bathroom door where she'd see it every morning, a daily reminder of her decision. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks she'd walk into that gala on Philip Brandt's arm, and Marcus Hale would finally see her. But she wouldn't lie. She wouldn't sneak. That's not who Simone was. So 2 days before the gala, she sat at the marble kitchen counter with expensive stationery and wrote the note that would shatter her husband's world. Short, direct, honest. She told him where she'd be and who she'd be with. Then she placed it where Marcus would find it, got dressed in the sapphire gown that made her feel beautiful and powerful and seen, and she left. Marcus found the note at 8:04 p.m., already dressed in his tuxedo, expecting Simone to be waiting by the door like she always was. The note destroyed him. Not the polite, quiet devastation of disappointment, the raw, visceral terror of loss. His hands shook. His vision blurred. Philip Brandt had his wife. The thought played on repeat, and with it came images Marcus couldn't shut off. Simone laughing at Philip's jokes, Simone's hand in. Philip's, Simone looking at another man the way she used to look at Marcus, back when they were young and poor and stupidly in love. Marcus called her. Voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He texted, "Where are you? We need to talk." No response. He paced the mansion like a caged animal, rage and panic warring in his chest. How dare she? How dare she humiliate him like this, publicly, at his event, with his rival? But underneath the anger, quieter and more insistent, another voice asked the questions. Marcus didn't want to face. When did she stop being yours? When did you stop being hers? When was the last time you chose her over a business deal, over a meeting, over anything? He couldn't remember. Marcus grabbed his keys and drove to the Lakeshore Grand Hotel like a man possessed, cutting through traffic, running a red light, his mind racing faster than his Bentley. He'd find her. He'd explain, what? That he was sorry? That he'd change? Would she even believe him? Did he even believe himself? The valet took his car, and Marcus stormed through the hotel's grand entrance into the ballroom where Milwaukee. His elite mingled in designer gowns and tailored suits, champagne flutes glittering under crystal chandeliers. His eyes scanned the crowd desperately, searching for sapphire blue, searching for her. And then he saw them. Simone stood near the far wall, radiant in that blue gown that hugged her curves. Like water, her natural hair styled in elegant curls Marcus had never seen before. She was laughing, actually laughing, head thrown back, joy written across her features, at something Philip Brandt was saying. Philip stood close, protective, his hand resting at the small of her back with an intimacy that made Marcus's blood boil. But what gutted Marcus, what absolutely destroyed him, was how beautiful Simone looked. Not beautiful in the cold, curated way she looked at his corporate events. Beautiful like she'd been 15 years ago in that cramped apartment, when her smile could light up a room and her laugh could make him forget every problem he had. When was the last time Marcus had made her laugh like that? He couldn't remember that either. Marcus crossed the ballroom, ignoring investors trying to catch his attention. Ignoring the shocked whispers as people recognized him, his wife, and the man she was with. The crowd parted like water. Simone saw him coming. Her smile faded, her spine straightened, but she didn't look away. She didn't cower. Philip noticed Marcus's approach and positioned himself slightly in front of Simone, protective but not possessive. Smart man, respectful man, everything Marcus should have been. Simone. Marcus's voice came out strangled. What the hell is this? She met his eyes with a calmness that terrified him more than anger would have. Hello, Marcus. This is exactly what my note said it would be. I'm attending the gala with Philip. Philip. Marcus spat the name like poison, turning to his rival. You think this is funny, Brandt? Stealing another man's wife? Philip's expression remained neutral, almost sad. I'm not stealing anyone, Hale. Simone is here because she chose to be. Maybe you should have been paying attention. The words hit like a slap. Marcus stepped forward, fists clenched, but Simone's hand landed on his chest, the first time she'd voluntarily touched him in months. Not here, she said quietly, her voice steady as steel. Not like this. The touch, the tone, the absolute control in her demeanor. It shocked Marcus into stillness. This wasn't the patient, accommodating Simone, who'd spent years bending herself into whatever shape he needed. This was someone new, someone who'd found her spine again. We need to talk, Marcus said, desperation bleeding through his attempt at authority. Simone glanced at Philip, who nodded slightly and stepped back. The terrace, she said. 5 minutes. Then she walked away, and Marcus followed her like a man heading to his own execution. The terrace was deserted. Cold Milwaukee air sharp after the ballroom. Warmth. The city's skyline glittering below them like scattered stars. Simone stood at the railing, arms crossed, the wind catching her hair. Marcus wanted to reach for her but didn't dare. The silence stretched, heavy with years of accumulated hurt. Finally, Marcus broke. How could you do this? His voice cracked. With Philip Brandt? At my event? Do you have any idea how this looks? And there it was, the sentence that revealed everything. Not how could you hurt me, but how does this look? Simone turned slowly, and the expression on her face was something Marcus had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but a bone-deep weariness that spoke of battles fought alone and lost in silence. How it looks, she repeated softly. That's what you're worried about. Your image? Our image, Simone. We're a team. We haven't been a team in 5 years, Marcus. Her voice stayed level, but her hands trembled. We've been a CEO and his accessory, a billionaire and his trophy wife, you and your brand. That's not fair. Fair? Now her voice rose, anger finally breaking through. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've spent 7 years standing beside you at events while you network with everyone except me? Is it fair that you know your investors' wives better than you know your own wife? Is it fair that I've eaten dinner alone 300 nights while you closed deals and courted clients and screwed your business partners? Marcus froze. Simone, don't. She held up a hand, tears streaming down her cheeks now, unstoppable. Don't insult me by denying it. Vanessa King, that VP from your Singapore office, your executive assistant who texted you at 2 a.m. I'm not stupid, Marcus. I've known for 2 years. I just kept hoping you'd remember you had a wife at home who loved you, who believed in you when you had nothing, who stood by you through every risk, every setback, every impossible dream. The accusations hit Marcus like physical blows. He opened his mouth to defend himself. But what defense did he have? The excuses died in his throat. I was building our future. No. Simone's voice turned cold. You were building your empire. I just lived in it. You know what Philip did on our first day volunteering together? He asked me what I wanted for lunch. That's it. That simple question. What do you want, Simone? And I realized I couldn't remember the last time you asked me what I wanted. You decide where we go, what we do, who we see. You fill my closet with clothes I never chose. You plan vacations I never agreed to and then cancel them without apology. You live your life, and I'm just expected to fit into the spaces you leave behind. Marcus felt something cracking inside his chest, the careful architecture of justifications he'd built to explain his choices, his priorities, his affairs. I gave you everything. You gave me things, Simone shouted, her composure finally shattering. Things, Marcus. Diamonds and designer bags and empty rooms in an empty house. You know what I wanted? Tuesday night dinners where you actually came home. Sunday mornings at church with your arm around me. Conversations about something other than stock prices and business deals. I wanted my husband. The man who used to bring me stolen flowers and make up songs while we did dishes. The man who looked at me like I was the most amazing thing in the world. Where did he go, Marcus? Where did you go? The question hung between them, unanswerable, because Marcus knew exactly where he'd gone. Into conference rooms and corporate jets and hotel. Rooms with women who weren't his wife, chasing success until success was all he had left. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words pathetically inadequate. "God, Simone, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. That's the problem." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Defeated and done. You didn't see. For years, Marcus, you looked right through me. I disappeared in front of you, and you never even noticed." She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara, not caring. "Do you know what Philip said to me? He said I deserve better. And he was right. I do. Every person deserves to be seen by the person who claims to love them. Every person deserves presence, not just provision. Provision without presence is neglect." The words escaped Marcus before he could stop them, and Simone's eyes widened slightly. "Where did you hear that?" "From you. 8 months ago. You said it at dinner, and I was reading emails on my phone. I didn't even look up." The memory surfaced like a drowning man gasping for air. Simone sitting across from him at their dining room table speaking, words that should have been a wake-up call, and Marcus scrolling through investor reports, barely grunting acknowledgement. She'd set down her fork. She'd left the table. She'd stopped trying, and he'd finished his meal alone without even noticing she was gone. The realization hit Marcus like a freight train. He'd been losing her for years, one dismissed conversation at a time, one broken promise at a time, one night away at a time. And he'd been too blind, too arrogant, too consumed with building an empire, to see that the foundation of his life was crumbling beneath him. "I'll change," Marcus said desperately, stepping toward her. "I'll be better. I'll be the man you need." "Stop." Simone's hand came up again, holding him at distance. "I've heard those promises before. Every time I caught you in a lie, every time I found evidence of another affair, every time you disappointed me. I'll change, baby. I'll do better. This deal is almost done, and then we'll have time. But the deals never end, Marcus. There's always another acquisition, another product launch, another emergency that matters more than your marriage. This is different. Why? Because I finally left. Because I found someone who treats me with basic human decency. Because your ego can't handle seeing me with another man?" She shook her head, fresh tears falling. "You don't want me back because you love me. You want me back because I'm yours, and Marcus Hale doesn't lose. Well, guess what? You already lost me. You lost me 2 years ago when you came home smelling like Vanessa's perfume and blamed it on a long flight. You lost me when you missed our 10th anniversary for a meeting you could have rescheduled. You lost me every single time you chose your company over your wife." Marcus felt his knees weakening. This couldn't be happening. Simone was his wife, his partner, his constant. She was supposed to be there, waiting, understanding, forgiving. She always forgave. Except she wasn't forgiving now. She was setting him on fire with truth, and Marcus was burning alive. "Please," he heard himself beg, a word that hadn't crossed his lips in years. "Please, Simone. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I've destroyed your trust, your love, everything we built, but I'm asking anyway. I'm begging. Give me one more chance to prove I can be the man you married. The man who loved you more than anything." "Did you love me more than anything?" Simone asked quietly. "Or did you love success, and I was just convenient? Someone to come home to when you were done conquering the world?" The question stabbed straight through Marcus's defenses into the raw wound of truth beneath. And in that moment, facing his wife on a terrace under a cold November sky, Marcus Hale. Billionaire CEO, tech industry titan, man who'd built an empire from nothing, broke. Actually broke. Tears he didn't know he still had the capacity to cry streamed down his face. His shoulders shook. He sank against the railing because standing felt impossible. "I don't know," he sobbed, the admission ripping out of him. "God help me, I don't know anymore. I lost track of what mattered. I lost track of us. I lost you. And I don't know how to find my way back." Simone watched him cry, this powerful man who never showed weakness, never admitted defeat, and her expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe, just maybe, the first crack in the armor she'd built to protect her battered heart. She stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell her perfume, the scent he'd taken for granted for years. "I loved you so much, Marcus," she said softly. "You were my first love, my only love. When we had nothing, I would have followed you anywhere. I believed in your dreams before anyone else did. I worked extra shifts, so you could buy materials for your prototypes. I held you when investors said no. I celebrated every yes like it was a miracle, because it was our miracle, our dream. It still is. No." The word was gentle but final. "It became your dream, your company, your success. I was left behind somewhere along the way, and you never looked back to check if I was still there." She paused, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. "I need time, Marcus. I need space to figure out who I am outside of being Mrs. Marcus Hale. I need to remember what I wanted before I spent every day trying to fit into your life. Are you leaving me?" The question came out broken, terrified. Simone was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. When she finally spoke, her voice was tired beyond measure. "I'm giving you one last chance. Not because you deserve it, you don't, but because somewhere underneath the CEO and the cheater and the man who forgot how to love me, there might still be the Marcus I married, the one who sang off-key while we cooked, the one who made me feel like the sun rose and set with my smile." She turned to face him fully, and her eyes held a steel that Marcus had never seen before. "But here's what that chance looks like. You get help. Real help. We do therapy, together, and separate. You cut off every woman you've been with. You step back from Hale Innovations, not permanently, but enough to prove your marriage matters more than your next quarterly report. And most importantly, you show me consistently over time that you've changed. Not words, Marcus. Actions. Every single day." "I will," Marcus said immediately, desperately. "Whatever it takes. I'll do it. And if you fail, if you slip back into old patterns, if you prioritize work over us, if I catch you in one more lie, I'm done. Completely. I'll file for divorce, and I won't look back." Her voice didn't waver. "Do you understand? This is it. Your last chance. There won't be another." Marcus understood. For the first time in years, he understood with absolute clarity. He stood at a crossroads, and one path led to the rest of his life with the woman he loved, and the other led to loneliness in a mansion full of expensive things that meant nothing. "I understand," he said hoarsely. "I won't waste it. I swear to God, Simone, I won't waste this." She studied his face for what felt like an eternity, searching for sincerity in his tear-stained expression. Finally, she nodded once. "We should go back inside. People will talk." "Let them talk," Marcus said, but Simone was already walking toward the ballroom. He followed, keeping a respectful distance, his mind racing. How had he gotten here? How had he become the man his wife needed saving from? The ballroom came back into view, music and laughter, and the life of the party continuing, oblivious to the fact that Marcus Hale's entire world had just shifted on its axis. Philip Brandt stood near the entrance, concern clear on his face as Simone approached. Marcus watched Philip's hand move instinctively toward her, then drop when he saw Marcus behind her. They exchanged quiet words Marcus couldn't hear, and then Simone did something that sent a knife straight through Marcus's heart. She hugged Philip. A real hug, grateful and warm and intimate. Philip whispered something in her ear that made her smile sadly, and then he nodded at Marcus, no hostility, no triumph, just acknowledgement, and walked away into the crowd. Simone turned back to Marcus. "Take me home," she said quietly. Not to his home, just home. But it was something. It was more than Marcus deserved. They left the gala together, Marcus's hand hovering near the small of Simone's back. but not quite touching, afraid any contact might shatter this fragile truce. In the car, silence stretched between them, not comfortable, not easy, but not the hostile distance of enemies either. They'd crossed into unknown territory, and neither knew how to navigate it yet. When they reached the mansion, Simone headed toward the stairs without a word. Marcus stood in the foyer, lost in his own home. "Simone?" She paused, one hand on the banister. "Thank you, for the chance. I know I don't deserve it." She looked back at him, exhausted and weary and still somehow beautiful despite the smeared makeup and tear-stained cheeks. "You're right, you don't. But I'm not doing this for you, Marcus. I'm doing it for the girl who married you in a courthouse 15 years ago. She deserves to know if the man she loved is still in there somewhere. If he's not, then at least she'll have her answer, and she can finally let go." Then she climbed the stairs and disappeared down the hallway, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and his regrets and a single, burning question that would haunt him through the sleepless night ahead. Could a man who'd forgotten how to love learn to remember? Could provision transform back into presence? Could Marcus Hale become the husband Simone deserved before she walked away forever? He had one chance to find out, one chance to prove that billionaires can change, that success doesn't have to cost everything, that love, real, humble, present love, matters more than empires. The clock was ticking, and Marcus Hale, who'd spent years racing toward success, now faced the most important deadline of his life: win back his wife's heart before she stopped believing he had one. So here's the question that kept Marcus Hale awake every night for the next 6 months. How do you prove you've changed to someone who's watched you break every promise you've ever made? The answer, Marcus discovered, wasn't grand gestures or expensive gifts or dramatic declarations. It was something far harder, far more terrifying. It was showing up every single day, even when it was uncomfortable, even when old habits screamed at him to check his phone, to take that urgent call, to prioritize the crisis at work over the crisis in his marriage. Especially then. The morning after the gala, Marcus woke at 5 a.m., not because his alarm went off, but because he hadn't slept. He'd spent the entire night on the couch in his study, staring at his phone, resisting the urge to respond to the 47 emails that had piled up overnight. Each notification felt like a test. Each ignored message felt like a small victory. At 6:30, he heard movement upstairs, Simone waking up. And Marcus did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He went to the kitchen and tried to cook breakfast. Now, understand something about Marcus Hale. This was a man who could pitch to venture capitalists, negotiate billion-dollar deals, and command boardrooms full of skeptical investors. But cooking? Cooking was not his gift. He burned the first batch of eggs. The second batch came out rubbery and grey. The toast caught fire, and set off the smoke detector. By the time Simone appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing one of his old college sweatshirts and looking exhausted, Marcus was standing in a disaster zone of culinary failure, frantically waving a dish towel at the screaming alarm. She stared at the scene. Marcus stared back, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he looked. Billionaire CEO in $1,000 pajamas, covered in egg and flour, surrounded by burnt offerings. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, and this was the miracle Marcus would remember for the rest of his life, Simone laughed. Not a big laugh. Not forgiveness wrapped in humor. Just a small, tired sound that said maybe, possibly, she saw him trying. "What are you doing?" she asked, moving to open windows and silence the alarm. Marcus looked at the carnage around him. "Making you breakfast. I'm not good at it. I can see that." She surveyed the burnt toast, the ruined eggs, the kitchen that looked like a war zone. "Marcus, you could have just called the cook." "I didn't want to call the cook." The words came out more intense than he intended. "I wanted to do something for you. With my own hands. The way I used to." He paused, suddenly vulnerable. "I know it's terrible. I know it doesn't make up for anything. But I'm trying, Simone. I'm trying to remember how to be the man who used to make you terrible scrambled eggs in our apartment." Simone was quiet, absorbing this. Then she moved to the refrigerator, pulled out more eggs, and handed them to Marcus. "Okay, then let me teach you." Again, and that's how they spent that first morning, standing side by side at the stove, Simone showing Marcus how to properly scramble eggs while he listened like his life depended on it, because it did. The eggs, still, weren't great, but they ate them together at the kitchen island, and, for the first time in years, breakfast felt like more than fuel. It felt like a beginning. But beginnings, Marcus learned, are easy. It's the middle that tests you. It's the daily choice to keep showing up when the novelty wears off and real life demands your attention, and real life came calling fast. That afternoon, Marcus had a standing Monday executive meeting, the kind that usually ran 3 hours and left him irritated and wired. He'd missed exactly 0 of these meetings in 7 years. At 2:45, his phone started buzzing. Text from Victor Chen, his COO. "Where are you? Board members are waiting." Marcus looked at the phone, looked at Simone reading on the couch across the room. The old Marcus would have jumped up, apologized, rushed out the door. The new Marcus, the Marcus trying desperately to save his marriage, typed back, "Cancel it. Reschedule for next week. I'm not available today." He could practically hear Victor's shock through the phone. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Are you serious?" Marcus typed, "Dead serious. Tell them it's a personal matter, non-negotiable." Then he turned off his phone completely and set it on the coffee table. Simone glanced up from her book, having watched the entire exchange. "You just cancelled your Monday meeting." "I did. That meeting you've never missed. That you told me was essential to company operations." "It was never essential." Marcus met her eyes. "I just made it essential because I could hide there. Couldn't hide from you, from us, from everything I was avoiding if I was busy running a company." He took a breath. "You said I needed to show you, consistently, that this marriage matters more than my next quarterly report. So I'm showing you." Simone didn't smile, didn't offer praise. She just nodded slowly and went back to her book. But Marcus saw it, the smallest relaxation in her shoulders, the tiny unclenching of her jaw. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. And right now, that was everything. The next test came Wednesday night. Marcus's personal assistant called. Vanessa King was in town and wanted to discuss the Singapore expansion over dinner. "She specifically requested you," the assistant said carefully. "Says it's time-sensitive." The old Marcus would have gone, would have rationalized it as business, ignored the history, told Simone he'd be home late. The new Marcus said, "Tell Vanessa I'm no longer the point person on Singapore. Victor will handle it, and going forward, any communication from Vanessa King comes through official channels only. Block her personal number from my phone." "Sir, are you sure?" "Completely sure." Marcus ended the call and immediately told Simone what had happened. Told her about the dinner invitation, about his response, about blocking Vanessa's number. Simone listened without expression, but Marcus saw her hands tighten around her coffee mug. "There are others," he continued, the confession scraping his throat raw. "Not as serious as Vanessa, but there were others. I'm cutting all of them off. Complete transparency. If any of them reach out, you'll know immediately." "How many others?" Simone's voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus wanted to minimize, wanted to protect himself, chose truth instead. 4, over 3 years. None of them meant anything. "Don't." Simone held up a hand. "Don't tell me they didn't mean anything. They meant enough for you to risk our marriage. They meant enough for you to lie to me repeatedly." Tears filled her eyes, and Marcus hated himself for putting them there. "I need their names. All of them." So Marcus gave her the names, watching each one land like a blow. Vanessa King, Rebecca Shaw from the Singapore office, his former executive assistant, Jordan Matthews, a marketing consultant named Diane Foster. 4 names. 4 betrayals. 4 women Simone would have to carry in her memory every time she looked at her husband. When he finished, Simone stood without a word and walked upstairs. Marcus heard the bedroom door close, not slam, which somehow felt worse. He sat alone in the living room for 2 hours, resisting every urge to chase after her, to explain, to make excuses. She needed space. He would give her space, even though waiting felt like drowning. At 11 p.m., Simone came back downstairs. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy from crying. "I need you to understand something," she said quietly. "Every name you just gave me is a scar I'll carry forever. I'll never forget them. Even if I forgive you, and that's still a very big if, I'll always know. Every time you're late, every time you take a business trip, every time you're on your phone, I'll wonder. I'll doubt. You've broken something in me, Marcus, and I don't know if it can be fixed." "I know." Marcus's voice cracked. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to rebuild what I destroyed." "You can't rebuild trust, Marcus. You can only build something new. It won't be what we had. That's gone. The question is whether we can build something different, something stronger, from the pieces you left behind." She wiped her eyes. "I made an appointment with Dr. Angela Morrison. She's a marriage counselor. Our first session is Friday at 10 a.m. If you're serious about this, you'll be there." "I'll be there," Marcus said immediately. "I'll be anywhere you need me to be." Friday arrived. Dr. Angela Morrison's office was in a modest building on Milwaukee's east side. Nothing fancy, nothing intimidating, just a comfortable space with soft lighting and 2 couches facing each other. Marcus felt more nervous walking into that office than he'd felt pitching to his first investor. This was different. This was his marriage, his life, laid bare for examination. Dr. Morrison was a black woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Marcus of Simone's sister, Aaliyah. She didn't offer platitudes or false comfort. She got straight to work. "Let's start with you, Marcus," she said. "Tell me why you're here." "I'm here because I've destroyed my wife's trust, and I need to fix it." "That's what you think Simone wants to hear. I'm asking what you want." The question caught Marcus off guard. What did he want? "I want my wife back. I want our marriage back." "Why?" "Because the first love her." "Do you?" "Doctor." Morrison's gaze was penetrating. "Or do you love the idea of her? The stability she represents? The validation of having kept your marriage intact despite your choices?" Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Dr. Morrison continued. "I'm not attacking you. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself, with Simone, with me. Because if you want to rebuild this marriage, you need to know why you're building it." Marcus sat with the question, really sat with it, ignoring his instinct to defend himself. Why did he want Simone back? Because she was his wife? Because he was supposed to want her? Or because she's the only person who ever saw me? Marcus said slowly, the truth emerging like water from a cracked dam. Before the money, before the success, when I was just a scared kid with dreams, too big for my circumstances, she looked at me and saw someone worth believing in. She made me feel valuable when I had nothing to offer but potential and stubbornness. He looked at Simone, who was watching him carefully, somewhere along the way. I forgot that. I started believing my value came from what I built, what I earned, what I achieved, and I stopped seeing the person who made me believe I could build anything in the first place. Dr. Morrison nodded. That's a start. Now, Simone, why are you here? Simone took a breath. Because I need to know if the man I married still exists. If he does, I want to find him again. If he doesn't, if Marcus is just this corporate machine who uses people and discards them, then I need to accept that and move on. The sessions became a regular ritual. Twice a week, Marcus and Simone sat in those couches and excavated their marriage. All the pain, all the resentment, all the moments when love should have spoken but silence won instead. Dr. Morrison didn't let either of them hide. When Marcus tried to explain his affairs as mistakes, she pushed back. Mistakes are accidental. You made choices. Own them. When Simone tried to shoulder blame for not speaking up, sooner, Dr. Morrison shut that down too. You're not responsible for his infidelity. Don't carry his weight. The sessions were brutal. Marcus heard exactly how deeply he'd hurt Simone. The nights she'd cried herself to sleep, the mornings she'd woken up dreading. Another day of invisibility, the way she'd questioned her worth, her beauty, her value, because her husband treated her like furniture. He heard how she'd started believing maybe she wasn't enough, maybe she was the problem. Maybe if she was more understanding or more patient or more something, he'd come home. And listening to her recount that pain, knowing he'd caused it, broke something fundamental in Marcus. The arrogance that had insulated him from consequence crumbled, leaving him raw and exposed and finally capable of seeing his wife. But therapy alone wasn't enough. Dr. Morrison assigned homework, exercises designed to rebuild connection. "I want you to spend 30 minutes every evening in conversation," she instructed. "No phones, no TV, just talking. Tell each other about your day, ask questions, listen. Actually listen to the answers." It sounded simple. It was anything but. The first night, they sat at the kitchen island in awkward silence, neither knowing how to start. Finally, Simone said, "I went to the grocery store today." Marcus, desperate to do this right, asked, "What did you buy?" And Simone, surprised by his interest, told him about the produce section and the woman who'd complimented her dress and the checker who'd shared a story about his grandson. Small details, mundane details, details Marcus had never bothered to ask about in years. But as days turned to weeks, those conversations deepened. Simone talked about wanting to go back to school, about dreams she'd shelved when Marcus's career took off. Marcus talked about the pressure he'd felt to succeed, the fear that failure meant proving everyone who'd doubted him right. They shared childhood stories, old wounds, secret hopes, and slowly, so slowly Marcus barely noticed it happening, they started remembering how to be friends. They watched movies on the couch, Simone's head on Marcus's shoulder. They cooked dinner together, laughing when Marcus inevitably screwed up his assigned tasks. They took walks through their old neighborhood, past the apartment where they'd started, and Marcus saw clearly what he'd traded for success: community for isolation, authenticity for image, love for achievement. One Saturday morning, Aaliyah called and invited them to family dinner at her house. Marcus hadn't been to Aaliyah's in 3 years. He'd always had an excuse, a conflict, something more important. This time, he cleared his entire Sunday. They drove to the modest bungalow in the old neighborhood, and Marcus felt nervous in a way he hadn't since his first investor pitch. Aaliyah answered the door, looked Marcus up and down with obvious skepticism and said, "You're actually here. Wonders never cease." Then she hugged him, a real hug, warm despite her wariness, and pulled them inside. The house was full. Aaliyah's husband Marcus had met twice, their 3 kids who barely knew their uncle, cousins and friends and neighbors who treated each other like family. Soul food covered every surface of the kitchen: collard greens, macaroni and cheese, fried chicken, cornbread, sweet potato pie. The air smelled like home, and Marcus realized with a sharp pang how long it had been since he'd felt this. The chaotic warmth of community, the laughter of people who genuinely cared about each other, not what you could do for them. Simone glowed in this environment. She moved through the rooms easily, hugging people, listening to stories, helping in the kitchen. This was her world, Marcus understood. The world he'd pulled her from and replaced with cold corporate galas where she never belonged. Aaliyah's youngest, a 7-year-old named Kayla, attached herself to Marcus with the fearless affection of children. She wanted to play dolls. Marcus, who'd spent 7 years networking with CEOs and VPs, found himself on the living room floor having a tea party with plastic cups and stuffed animals. Kayla narrated an elaborate story about a princess and a dragon, and Marcus played along, making his stuffed bear dance and speak in ridiculous voices. When he looked up, Simone was watching from the kitchen doorway, something soft and sad in her expression. Later, when they were alone for a moment, she said quietly, "You're good with her. She's easy to be good with. She just wants attention." "We talked about having kids once, a long time ago," Marcus remembered. They'd been lying in bed in that cramped apartment, dreaming about the future. Simone had wanted 3. Marcus had wanted to wait until they were financially stable. Then he'd gotten successful, and they'd never talked about it again. "Do you still want them?" he asked carefully. "I don't know." Simone's eyes glistened. "I couldn't bring children into the marriage we had, Marcus. I wouldn't do that to them. Give them a father who's never home, who prioritizes work over everything. But maybe—" She trailed off, not finishing the thought. Marcus understood what she wasn't saying. Maybe if he truly changed. If he proved he could be present, they could revisit that dream. But it was a distant maybe, contingent on months of consistency he hadn't yet demonstrated. The weeks accumulated into months. Marcus kept showing up, kept choosing Simone over work, kept turning off his phone at dinner, kept attending therapy, kept having those 30-minute conversations that stretched into hour-long exchanges where they remembered why they'd fallen in love. He stepped back from daily operations at Hale Innovations, promoted Victor to acting CEO, while Marcus took a consulting role that had him in the office 2 days a week maximum. The company didn't collapse. The board grumbled but adjusted, and Marcus discovered something shocking. He didn't miss it. Didn't miss the constant pressure, the endless meetings, the validation he'd been chasing. What he'd been calling fulfillment was really just noise. Noise he'd used to drown out the emptiness at home. Spring arrived. Milwaukee thawed from its brutal winter, trees budding with new life. Marcus and Simone had been doing the work for 4 months, and while Simone wasn't fully healed, might never be fully healed, she was softening. The walls she'd built were still there, but Marcus could see cracks letting light through. They laughed more, touched more, talked about the future tentatively, carefully, like people learning to hope again. One evening in late April, Marcus came home from the office to find Simone in the garden, planting flowers. She looked up when she heard him, dirt smudged on her cheek, and smiled. A real smile. Not guarded, not cautious, just glad to see him. "I planted tulips," she said. "Your mom's favorite, remember?" Marcus did remember. His mother had died 6 years ago, and he'd been too busy with a product launch to properly grieve. Simone had handled the funeral arrangements alone, had held Marcus while. He cried once, briefly, then watched him bury the pain under work. "She would have loved them," Marcus said, kneeling beside Simone in the dirt. "She would have loved seeing you do this. She loved you so much, Marcus. She'd want you to be happy, really happy, not just successful. I'm learning the difference." Marcus took Simone's hand, dirty and calloused from gardening. "Thank you for teaching me." That night, for the first time in months, Simone kissed Marcus first. Not a peck. A real kiss, tender and hesitant, but unmistakably intentional. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "I'm not all the way there yet, but I can see us getting there. Can you?" "I can see it," Marcus said, and meant it with every atom of his being. In May, something unexpected happened. Philip Brandt called Marcus directly. Marcus's first instinct was suspicion. What did his rival want? But Philip's tone was respectful, genuine. "I know this is awkward," Philip said, "but I wanted to reach out about a joint initiative. My company's developing green energy solutions for low-income housing and I think Hale Innovations' smart home technology could be integrated. It could help thousands of families, reduce energy costs." Marcus's ego wanted to refuse, wanted to keep Philip at arm's length, maintain the rivalry. But Simone's voice echoed in his memory. "Philip treated me with respect. He saw me." If Marcus wanted to truly change, he needed to acknowledge that Philip Brandt had shown his wife the dignity Marcus had failed to provide. "Let's meet," Marcus said. They met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. It was strange, sitting across from the man who'd taken his wife to a gala, who'd shown Simone what respect looked like. But Philip wasn't gloating or territorial. He was just a decent man trying to do good work. They talked about the project, about integration possibilities, about serving communities both had neglected while chasing profits. By the end of the meeting, Marcus had agreed to partner on the initiative. As they shook hands, Philip said quietly, "She's special, you know. Simone, I hope you realize what you have." "I do now," Marcus said. "Thank you for treating her well when I didn't." Philip nodded, and something unspoken passed between them. Not quite friendship, but mutual respect. an understanding that they'd both cared about the same woman, and the best man had won not through competition, but through Simone's choice. When Marcus told Simone about the partnership that evening, she cried. "You reached out to Philip. He reached out to me, but I said yes. I said yes because you were right. He's a good man, and I need to be big enough to work with good men, even when my pride says otherwise." Simone hugged him then, tight and fierce. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and those 4 words meant more to Marcus than any investor's praise, any market success, any accolade he'd ever earned. Summer came. 6 months since the gala. 6 months of consistent effort, of showing up, of choosing Simone daily. Dr. Morrison had been pleased with their progress, noting how they did rebuilt communication, how Marcus had maintained his commitments. But she'd also warned them, the work doesn't stop. You're building new patterns, but old habits have deep roots. Stay vigilant. Marcus took the warning seriously. One evening in late June, he came home to find Simone on the terrace, the same terrace where she'd confronted him, where their marriage had nearly ended. She was staring out at the Milwaukee skyline, and Marcus felt a flutter of fear. Was she remembering that night? Regretting her decision to stay? He joined her at the railing. "What are you thinking about?" "Us," Simone said simply. "6 months ago, I stood here and told you I didn't know if the man I married still existed. I gave you one last chance because I owed it to the girl who fell in love with you in that apartment." She turned to face him, and her eyes were clear. "I found him, Marcus. He's been here all along, just buried under fear and pride and all the armor you built to protect yourself from failure. But he's back. You're back." Marcus's throat tightened. "Does that mean—" "It means I forgive you." The words hung in the air between them, precious and fragile. "I forgive you for the affairs, for the neglect, for making me feel invisible. I forgive you because you've shown me, consistently, that you're willing to fight for us. You've put in the work. You've proved. You can change." She paused, tears streaming down her face. "But it also means we're starting over. The marriage we had is gone, Marcus. Dead and buried. We're building something new now, something better." "I'll take new," Marcus said, pulling her close. "I'll take better. I'll take anything as long as it's with you." They stood there holding each other as the sun set over Milwaukee, and Marcus realized this was the moment he'd been working toward, not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, just the quiet peace of being fully present with the woman he loved. But Simone had one more surprise. The next morning she presented Marcus with an idea. "I want to renew our vows. Not a huge wedding, just family and close friends. At the Lakeshore Grand Hotel, where everything changed." Marcus understood immediately. She wanted to reclaim that space, transform it from the site of their worst moment into a celebration of their renewal. When? August 15th. Our anniversary. They spent the next 6 weeks planning a small, intimate ceremony. Aaliyah would be Simone's maid of honor. Victor would stand as Marcus's best man. They invited 40 people, family, real friends, people who'd supported them through the hard times. No investors, no business contacts, no networking opportunities disguised as celebration, just love. August 15th arrived warm and clear. Marcus stood on the same terrace where he'd confronted Simone, but now it was decorated, with flowers and white chairs transformed into a space of hope rather than heartbreak. When Simone appeared in a simple ivory dress, not the elaborate gown she'd worn at their first wedding, but something elegant and understated, Marcus felt his breath catch. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful. He'd just forgotten to look. The ceremony was officiated by their pastor from Simone's church, the church Marcus now attended every Sunday, where he'd learned that success measured in relationships far outweighed success measured in quarterly reports. When it came time for vows, Marcus spoke from the heart. No script, no preparation. "Simone, I promised to love and cherish you 15 years ago, and I broke that promise. I put everything before you, my company, my ego, my fear of failure. I took you for granted, and I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry." His voice cracked, but he pushed on. "Today, I make a new promise. I promised to see you every day, to choose you over every meeting, every deal, every distraction. I promised to be present, not just provide. I promised to love you not with diamonds and houses, but with time and attention and the kind of devotion you deserved from the beginning. You gave me a second chance I didn't earn, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving I won't waste it. Simone's vows were equally powerful. Marcus, you were my first love, my only love. When we had nothing, we had everything because we had each other. Then we got everything, and I felt like I had nothing. She wiped tears from her cheeks. But you came back, when I gave you the hardest challenge of your life, to actually change, not just promise to. You did the work. You showed up. You chose me. Today, I'm choosing you again, but not because I have to, because I want to. Because the man standing in front of me is the man I always knew you could be. I love you, Marcus. I've never stopped, but now I also respect you. And respect is what turns love into partnership. When they kissed, their friends and family erupted in applause. But Marcus barely heard it. He was too focused on Simone, the way she smiled against his lips, the way her hand tightened. In his, the way this kiss felt like coming home after being lost for years. At the reception, Marcus watched Simone dance with her nephews, laugh with Aaliyah, glow with genuine happiness. Philip Brandt was there. He and Marcus had become unlikely friends through their joint charitable project, and when Philip raised his glass in a toast, he said something that resonated through the room. To second chances and the courage it takes to deserve them. Later, as the evening wound down, Marcus and Simone slipped away to the terrace one last time. The city spread out below them, lights glittering like earthbound stars. Marcus pulled Simone close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, comfortable and safe. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For believing in me, again, still. For seeing something worth saving when I'd become someone not worth knowing." Simone tilted her face up to his. "You know what I realized? You spent years solving problems for millions of people, making their homes smarter, their lives easier. But the biggest problem you needed to solve was right in front of you. Us." Marcus nodded, the truth of it settling in his bones. "I built an empire on understanding people's needs. Meanwhile, I completely ignored the needs of the person I love most." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I used to think success meant being the richest, the most powerful, the most recognized. Now I know success is measured in moments like this. Being here, with you, fully present, finally awake to what actually matters." They stood in comfortable silence, and Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 6 months ago, he'd been a man who'd had everything, and realized too late it meant nothing. Today, he was a man who'd lost everything that mattered and fought like hell to earn it back. The difference wasn't dramatic. It was daily. It was in the small choices, turning off his phone at dinner, asking about Simone's day, and actually listening, choosing her over crisis after crisis at work, attending therapy even when it was uncomfortable, showing up at family dinners and church services and gardening projects. It was in learning that provision without presence is neglect, and that real love requires you to be there, consistently, humbly, devotedly. "What are you thinking?" Simone asked, reading the contemplation on his face. "That I almost lost you. That I nearly threw away the best thing in my life chasing things that don't matter. That I'm the luckiest man alive because you gave me one more chance." He kissed her forehead gently. "And I'm thinking that I'll never stop being grateful for that chance." Simone smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and lit up her entire face. "You know what I'm thinking? That we're going to be okay. Better than okay. We went through hell, but we came out stronger. This marriage, this new marriage we've built, it's built on honesty and presence and real commitment. Not just promises, action. Every single day," Marcus agreed. As the summer night deepened and the stars emerged above Milwaukee, Marcus Hale understood something fundamental about redemption. It's not a destination you reach and then celebrate. It's a direction you choose over and over in moments both momentous and mundane. It's burned eggs and therapy sessions and cancelled meetings. It's conversations at the kitchen island and family dinners in modest homes and partnerships with former rivals. It's the daily decision to see your partner, to choose them, to show up even when, especially when, it would be easier not to. Marcus had spent years building a billion-dollar company, revolutionizing an industry, earning the respect of investors and competitors alike. But none of it, compared to the achievement of earning back his wife's trust, of becoming the husband she deserved, of transforming from a man who'd forgotten how to love into a man who understood that love is the ultimate success metric. They nearly lost each other, but in finding their way back, they'd discovered something more valuable than all of Marcus. His wealth. They learned that real love isn't about grand gestures or material comfort. It's about being truly present for one another, day after day, in sickness and health, in triumph and failure, in moments of crisis and moments of peace. It's about choosing your partner over your pride, over your work, over everything else that competes for your attention. Because at the end of the day, when the deals are closed and the companies are sold and the empires crumble, what remains is the person who believed in you when you had nothing, and whether you cherished them the way they deserved. Marcus almost learned that lesson too late. But sometimes, just sometimes, love offers a second chance to get it right. And standing on that terrace with Simone in his arms, Marcus Hale promised himself he'd spend the rest of his life getting it right. So here's my question for you. When was the last time you showed someone you love that they actually matter? Not with gifts or grand gestures, but with your presence, your time, your full attention. Because here's what Marcus learned the hard way. You can have all the success in the world, but if you're not present for the people you love, you have nothing. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships, if it reminded you that the people we love deserve our presence, not just our provision, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Not for me, but as a commitment to yourself that you'll be more present today than you were yesterday. Leave a comment telling me about a time you almost took someone for granted, or how you're going to show up differently for someone you love. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone chasing success at the cost of their relationships, someone who's forgotten what really matters, share this video with them. Because sometimes the hardest truth is the one that saves us. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that matter, stories that challenge us to be better, to love harder, to show up fully for the people who make life worth living. The question isn't whether you love someone. The question is, do they feel loved? And if the answer is no, what are you going to do about it today, right now? Because tomorrow isn't promised, and second chances don't come to everyone. Don't be Marcus Hale standing in an empty mansion, reading a note from someone who finally stopped waiting. Be the person who shows up before it's too late. Now go, close this video, and be present for someone who matters.